This video is for my buddy BJ, who has been reassembling his Sebenza incorrectly the entire time he's had it. Sorry BJ, had to make this video. This is after the Nkosi versus Sebenza video. I'm putting these back together. The way that you put your Sebenza back together properly is you have the handle scales put together completely. This screw is pretty much tightened down. This one I leave a little bit loose so you can kind of slide the scales back and forth a little bit. You need a little bit of the Reeve fluorinated grease. You're going to put a little bit on either side. Actually, we're going to put a little bit inside of the pivot here, just a tiny bit. Yep, our lube's a little bit separated. If your lube gets separated like that, put the cap back on and just kind of mush it around like this, and it should pretty much come back together. There you go. Just need a little tiny bit in there. You run your pivot through. That lube and the tolerances should be enough to hold this thing in there. There's that. You gotta put a little bit on each side of the blade. Don't need a whole lot. Whoops. The pivot fell out. That's the toughest part, is getting this pivot to stay in place. Looks like this side had the big washer, so you go ahead and place the big washer on top. That'll stick right there. Do the same to the other side. Put your little washer on. Now here is a quick trick. We need something. I'll use this paracord to hold this blade up. One of the toughest parts about putting this back together is getting that lock bar to stay down. Let me grab a piece of paper here. To keep that lock bar from moving, what I do is I take a piece of paper, fold it up a couple of times, and you basically wedge it in here, and that gets the lock bar pretty much out of the way for you, for the most part. Just like that. And then you can grab your pivot screw, run that through just the tiniest bit so it's held in there. Make sure this pivot is sitting even on each side, and you just run this through. Sorry, I didn't realize I was off camera. You slide that whole thing in there, push your pivot up and through, and you can seat your pivot screw. This eliminates any pinched washers that can happen. Pull this piece out. Tighten this down. Make sure all your screws are pretty much as tight as you can get them. Don't really tighten them down, but you can tighten them pretty darn good. And that's pretty much all there is to it. That's how you put your Sebenza back together.